Selectboard to decide when to kick things off. Good evening. How are you? Okay, Selectperson.
Thank you.
We'll leave it up to you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it's a public hearing. If you'd like to open it up. I don't know how formal you did. Okay, great. Well,
but you shut it down because it's a public hearing and what it's about. That's really the responsibility of the chair. It's up to the meeting.
Call the meeting to order then. Public meeting on community power.
great. Well, thank you very much and good evening. My name's Andrew Hatch and I represent the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. And I'm pleased to be here tonight on what is the first of two required public hearings to discuss community power. And I still have a couple more of these slide handouts if anybody would like to follow along who doesn't have one yet, just let me know. But we will be here also on the 9th of December as well. My colleague Henry Hearn will be coming to do this. Very much the same thing twice because it's a requirement of the process. So what I've got here is a little handout of a slide deck that we've prepared. And I wanted to start by just explaining, I know the Selectboard has had meetings before and understands this, but just to run quickly through what community power is all about, how we've got here today, and then we have about a half an hour. So I don't want to sort of go on too long until we have a chance to have folks to ask questions and get familiar with what this is all about. But basically, you know, community power is all about the pooling of energy supply. It's nothing to do with the poles and the wires. So your utility, Eversource, would continue to maintain the electricity supply. So maintaining the poles and the wires, continue to do the billing, and continue to be the people you would get in touch with if you had an outage. That's really their only role as a distribution utility. For many years in the state of New Hampshire, we've had deregulation, which means that the utilities' only means of income and profit is the distribution of electricity. They have been supplying what is called default power to most customers. But the idea of deregulation was that default power would be like a backstop. And when folks came to town, they'd come and get an account number and be connected because Eversource is your only choice. You don't have a choice of who provides your electricity. And then you'd go out to the marketplace and it would be a competitive rate that you would sign up for. But the reality's been that the vast majority, particularly of residential customers, are either unaware of that or they've tried it hasn't worked very well for them. And most people are still on default power with Eversource. Back in 2019, the legislature passed RSA 53E, which is the law that allows community power to exist. And they found it in the public interest to be able to offer an alternative default supply to the utilities. And that's what we're talking about today, and the idea of Dalton community power being created. It's intended that folks can switch in and out of this program at will. There's no barriers to this. It is a voluntary program, but it is operated as an opt-out program, meaning it becomes the default supply of the local community. And folks would have to take action, excuse me, if they were on current supply from Eversource. Are any people in the room with a third-party supplier? Or do you know? So you are, okay, yes. So anybody that's on a third-party supply would not automatically be enrolled, but they would be eligible to what we call opt-in at any time if the rates and their contract allowed. But the whole idea of community power is to make it as simple as possible and to make sure that folks can benefit from saving money, which is what I'll speak about in a minute. community power programs are only funded by the revenue from participating ratepayers. So anybody that's not involved in the program would not have to pay any money out in order for it to exist. And it doesn't affect Dalton in any way from a financial liability perspective. And I'll speak to that again in a moment. I'm just turning the page now to the benefits of community power. So what I've been talking about, this idea of local control and also lower costs. The first and universal offering is that Dalton Community Power will only launch if the prevailing rates offered by the Community Power Coalition are lower than those of Eversource. We track to the same 6-month cycle that the utilities set their rates for. So we're just about to hear about some new rates. They'll be announced by Eversource sometime in the middle of December, and they will be in effect from February and through till the end of July. We're in the rate period that started at the beginning of August and will expire at the end of January. So that's job one, to save folks money. There's also options for people to opt up to a higher level of renewable content in their electricity if they so choose. And then there's a whole bunch of other technologies and future vision that the coalition's offering in terms of allowing people to access existing technology that, frankly, the utilities have not yet invested in. Investor-owned utilities, their main focus, their primary objective is to maintain a return on investment for their shareholders. And regrettably, that has meant that some technology that's available in the marketplace is not available to us. So as an Eversource customer, not being able to access what one of the things is called time of use rates, which is a concept that if you have the right meter, you could choose a time of day when electricity prices might be lower to, use your electricity more wisely and save money. But that opportunity isn't available to you right now. So that's one of the examples of some of the things that we anticipate coming to be available in the future. So just to summarize, when community power launches, most default customers of Eversource will be automatically enrolled in the program. The participation is voluntary, meaning that people can choose to opt out at any time. There is no penalty. The only delay will be when your meter is read, because your meter is read, as you know, once a month, and we would contact Eversource and your wishes would be honored after the next meter read. If you're with a third-party supplier, you would not automatically be enrolled. And just while I'm on that, does anybody have solar or any form of net metering? Because that's another category. If people have solar panels and they use a net metering service, we can't currently service those customers. If people aren't with net metering in the room, I don't need to get into the details, but it's something that we're trying to resolve. It's a regulatory issue. It isn't anything that we don't want to do. It's just we can't do it right now.
Is there pending legislation that would allow that?
Well, funnily enough, we've been speaking with the Public Utilities Commission, and they found that there isn't legislation that actually needs to happen. The legislation's already in place. It's the utilities who need to get into compliance with what they're already obligated to do. It's an expense, like I said before, so there's a certain amount of reluctance and there's a lot of debate going on, but we are making progress. It's just because it's at a regulatory level, it's fairly protracted, so we can't put a firm time frame on when we can resolve it, but we're working hard to do it.
You think it's months or years or?
Well, I've been saying months for years. I mean, I'm not being a wise guy about it. I just honestly, I couldn't put a hard number on it. Eversource is unfortunately the one that has invested the least in this and is so further behind than some of the other ones like a Liberty and New Hampshire Electric Co-op. So we may get down to having to go one-on-one with each utility and straighten things out directly, and it could be a little while, unfortunately. So Eversource will continue to supply the electricity and be responsible for maintaining all of that and the billing. And as I said before, community power is self-funded, so there's no taxes raised to fund the program. And in fact, Dalton by statute can't spend any amount of money on either launching or maintaining community power. Dalton has joined the Community Power Coalition, and so we're providing a lot of the resources and expertise to make this an easy lift for your town. So if you turn the page and you see this little graph here of electricity choices, this shows you where we are in this current rate period. As I said, it came in force on the 1st of August and runs through to the end of January. And right now, as an Eversource customer, you're paying 10.403 cents a kilowatt hour. And the basic offering in the blue there, the Granite Basic, that is the rate that the coalition charges on a comparative basis to Eversource's rate. So that's 8.6. So it's nearly 2 cents a kilowatt hour cheaper, almost 20% savings at the moment. And the estimated savings on the right-hand side are based upon just an average of 650 kilowatt hours a month, which is, you know, a number and an average that's used across the industry just to compare rates. But everybody's rates are obviously vary depending on your usage. On the left-hand side of this handout, you can see the choices and how you can elect to opt up to a higher level of renewables. All these green numbers here, the 9.3, 10, and 12 cents a kilowatt hour, are the rates that are charged for higher levels of renewable content. That's completely voluntary. Some folks choose to do it. They would like to have, say, for example, solar or have renewable power at their home, but they, for one reason or another, can't do that. So one way to express your interest in renewable energy is to pay a little premium and get up to 100% renewable energy. And I can explain how those rates come into force if people are interested. But on the left-hand side, you can see we work as hard as we can to make it simple and easy for people to get in touch and express their interest. We would create a website that folks would be able to access. We would manage it at communitypowernh.gov, and it would have like a /Dalton, and it would go along with we have over 60 communities that are already doing that. So that's what we call our portal. But if people aren't comfortable with using the internet, then we have an 800 number that's staffed by people and available during business hours, so people could call in. And all you need to do is have an account number handy. And if you were not wanting to participate in the program, you wanted to opt up or change what your current rate you're currently on, you would just be able to get in touch and we would take care of that. And there is no charge for that, and there's no fees involved. Just below, just can show you an example of an Eversource bill. So a lot of things with community power don't change. You'll get the bill from Eversource. There won't be a separate bill from community power. And the only thing that will change in the way it looks is that highlighted piece. That's the supplier side of the bill. And so instead of it coming from Eversource, it would say your supplier is Dalton Community Power. And it would have the prevailing rate, you know, the 8.6 cents at the moment. And all of the line items below, all the delivery charges, those are the ones that are set between Eversource and the Public Utilities Commission. We don't have any involvement on that side of the bill. I know that you may have probably read in the press that Eversource is setting people up for expectation of up to 45% increases over the next 5 years because of investments they are having to make in reliability and upgrades to the system. As I said earlier, Eversource don't profit from the supply of electricity, and although it's an easy assumption to say that if they're not profiting from that, they'll put the rates up on the other side, but that just isn't how it happens, and it isn't how it works. These are two very separate parts of the bill. But you'll continue just to pay a bill to Eversource, and they would reimburse the coalition for the supply side. The next slide here is just jumping ahead a little bit, but just to explain that if the decision to move forward with Dalton Community Power is made, there will be plenty of notification above and beyond these public hearings and so forth. Everybody would receive a detailed letter explaining exactly what's going to happen at least 30 days ahead of a launch. And at that point, they would have explained that it's completely optional. If you don't want to participate, you just have to get in touch and opt out. Or indeed, as I said before, you can change your elections and opt up to a higher level of renewables in whatever way is most convenient to you. If you're there with a third-party supplier, would explain that they won't automatically be enrolled, but they're very welcome to do so. And all rates are always published at least 30 days in advance, so that nobody is going to get surprised by this. So the implementation and process steps here. The Select Board has joined the coalition and established an Electric Aggregation Committee, which is what's required by law. And here we are tonight on the first of two public hearings about the Electric Aggregation Plan. And the Electric Aggregation Plan is a document that is being considered by your committee, and it has got a sort of draft form that is one that we provide, that we know will pass muster at the Public Utilities Commission. But it's important for Dalton to consider it as a template, and Dalton can then add its own particular goals and objectives and make sure that it's in line with the interests and the wishes of the town. And once those two steps have taken place, that plan can be submitted for approval of the Public Utilities Commission, and at the same time be on track to move forward to town meeting, where there would be perhaps a warrant article asking the voters to consider the opportunity of moving forward with community power. And then if that's the case, the coalition can take care of launching the program at the next available opportunity, which, as I was explaining to Jeanette, the fastest this could happen if it was successfully adopted at town meeting would be June. This year we've had a launch in March, we've had one in June, and we had one in October, and that could well be the schedule for 2025. So I just want to explain what the Electric Aggregation Plan is all about. As I said, it's required by the statute 53E, and it explains how the whole program operates and how it complies with the state requirements. And it's required to have community input in the whole process. So that's what we're here to do tonight. The plan it's not complicated. It just introduces the concept, as I just explained to you tonight, about community power, how it would work in Dalton, what the goals and objectives of the town are, and how it's going to meet all the statutory requirements, and then just explains who the coalition is. I've touched on net metering, some of the issues and some of the things that we want to try to do to improve how net metering is done in the state of New Hampshire, how we deliver the electricity to the town, how we maintain customer data and privacy. That's a very important component. We've got to make sure that we make sure that we maintain a high degree of privacy with folks' data. We don't share your information. Other than you getting that mailing, it would not be something we would use for marketing purposes or selling the data for any third-party means. So the Electric Aggregation Plan defines all these goals and objectives. It defines all the governance, how we structure the organization, and what it commits the town to doing in terms of complying with statute. So there's a lot of terms that are not particularly familiar to folks of universal access and all requirements electricity, but it's what's required by law in the state, and making sure that we meet the minimum basic requirements of the renewable portfolio standard, which is the environmental attributes of electricity that are mandated in the state of New Hampshire. It will explain how net metering is going to be provided, and another important aspect is the electric assistance program. Folks who are on electric assistance will be able to be enrolled and benefit from savings, and their program will not be affected, and they would still receive that assistance even if they were enrolled in the program. But other than that, the plan does not obligate the town of Dalton to take any particular action, and again, it does not commit the town of Dalton for any financial commitment or liability to its taxpayers. So I'm almost done. I'm just going to touch on the coalition briefly. This is a draft warrant article. This isn't yet adopted by the select board. It's just a version of what we put out there as a way that you could word a warrant article. But I put it in here because it's just important to stress what the warrant article does not do. It doesn't vote to launch community power. It votes to authorize the select board to implement the plan, the electric aggregation plan, and take all action as they see fit at a time of their choosing. So it's a little bit less of a direct statement, and it just empowers the select board to act on behalf of the community. So finally, just as a couple of slides about the coalition, this one I have to update very regularly. We just hit the 70 member mark last week. The town of Conway joined at our last week's board meeting. So we have 66 municipal members and 4 county members. Coos County is not one of the counties that has joined as a county yet, so it's not relevant for folks in the North Country, but some other parts of the state are also operating a county-wide operation. We're representing slightly over 40% of the population of New Hampshire right now and serving over 188,000 customers. In the first year, and we launched our first programs in April of last year, so just over 18 months ago. And just in that first year, with the first handful of communities, we saved those customers $14 million. And what that means is how much those folks would have paid if they'd stayed on the regular default rate of the utility compared to what they did pay by having the lower rates of the coalition. So it's a very significant amount of money. And our operation is now the second largest electric supplier in New Hampshire, which brings with it the opportunity of transformational action. And what I mean by that is that because we now have representation of close to 200,000 customers, we have a say that is of great interest to the Public Utilities Commission and to the legislature. And so we do make sure that the interests of the ratepayers are represented at the highest level and not just the voice of the utilities. I wouldn't be sitting here today were it not for the dedication and vision of a large number of volunteers. Dalton has joined the coalition, so Dalton has a vote at the coalition. There isn't much of an obligation to the town. What I mean by that is you don't have to do very much, but if you choose to, we would welcome it. And all of our board of directors and all of our committees are staffed by representatives of all of our members. So it's a volunteer-run organization. And our board will have a 1/3 up for re-election every year, and our annual meeting is in April. And Dalton will have a vote, and it has the same vote as a large city. So we try to keep the representation of our smaller members as important and as high profile as our larger cities, which I think is a very important democratic initiative. About just over a year ago, we started to hire our first staff, and our CEO, Brian Calnan, he comes from the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and he's had over 30 years experience in power procurement, both here and in the state of Vermont. We also have 7 other members of staff who are responsible for all of the areas of operation and are supported by a significant number of third-party professional organizations that give us the bandwidth to be able to deliver and maintain our growth of the organization. We're a non-profit, so we pass on the savings as best we can to our members. Anything that would be above and beyond the cost of the procuring the power and maintaining the coalition is accrued in what we call community reserves. And the intention of those reserves is to make sure that we maintain a strong balance sheet and look to the future growth of the organization in a robust manner. We also have intention to get to a certain critical mass in terms of reserves so that we can cut out a lot of middle parties that we now depend upon for procuring power, and they take a profit and we can't pass that on to our ratepayers. So once we get to a certain size, a certain number of operating days cash on hand, in fact, is what it's all about, we will be able to become a procurer of power at the highest level in ISO New England and be able to cut out those middle parties and pass on even more savings to our members. So that's basically how we operate. We aren't just a plain old non-profit, we're a government instrumentality. So just like your Board of Selectmen, we are subject to the right to know laws. We have to maintain full transparency. All of our meetings are open to the public. Our budgets and our performance and our contracts and everything are public, available to the public and are published on our website. So we are as transparent as possible. So that basically is community power and where we stand today, and I would very much welcome any questions, and if I can answer any, please let yourself be known.
You did mention something about reading the meters. Is that what you guys, they do? They still read the meter?
Yeah, so Eversource will continue to read the meters. Eversource, as a distribution utility, does the billing, so it will continue just the same as it has done.
Well, the reason why I brought that up is they don't read the meters. I mean, they don't come to the house to read the meter?
No.
Do they have a special rig to do that, or?
Well, yes. So typically, most meter reading is done through a remote service on your meter that actually sends that data out to Eversource. But they're responsible for all the consolidated billing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I hope, and I can only assume that I've answered some questions tonight. Yes, sir.
Are there any upfront fees involved with the service, or is everything strictly based on the cost of power and payments are within a month?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. There are no upfront costs. Any cost that is incurred to get things going, as I said, we send out a letter to everybody before this launches. All those costs will be recouped at a later date from the revenues received from the ratepayers who are participating. There's no other source of income. So it won't affect the town in any way financially. The only thing the town's allowed to do is maybe expend some money on a legal review of a contract or something fairly minor like that.
But like most alternative power agreements, we may pay a greater rate at times than the default rate and a lower rate at other times than the default rate?
Well, it's fair to say that we can't make a hard and fast promise that we will always beat the rate of Eversource. Mm-hmm. It is also fair to say that we have done in the last 3 consecutive rate cycles. And it's certainly, I mentioned earlier, we track our pricing to that 6-month rate setting of the utilities so that folks can have a really easy apples for apples comparison. If you went out to the third-party marketplace right now, you'd probably be asked to sign a commitment for a year or longer. And you'll know at the end whether you saved any money or not, but you won't know at the time. For our basic offering, we choose at the moment and for the foreseeable future to map to those rates of the utilities because everybody knows what they're saving and they can do the math. The way, as I said earlier, the utilities are not allowed by statute to profit from the procurement of power, and right now they procure power on a date certain. There's 2 days in the calendar. Back in December of 2022, it was a very bad day for Eversource customers because it was when the war in Ukraine had just started and the price of natural gas had spiked, and it was crazy time. And people ended up paying 20+ cents a kilowatt hour for 6 whole months because of that. We buy power in a completely different way over time. While I've been sitting here, the price of power has probably changed half a dozen times. Now we're buying power and forecasting load and buying it in the most expeditious manner we can and passing those savings on to our customers. So we intend to try and maintain a discount to the utilities. There are some loosening of their procurement rules that may change the dynamics a little bit, but right here, right now, that's our intention. And again, as I said earlier, we would publish rates. These little flyers that I was handing out, a version of this would come to the town of Dalton in advance of a rate period change. Everybody would know way ahead if there was going to be any disadvantage, and folks could step out of the program and opt back to Eversource and then opt back in at a future time if they so chose. But that hasn't happened up to now, and we hope it won't, because we want to launch Dalton, and we can't do that if our rates are higher than Eversource's. Okay. Well, I had half an hour, and it's half an hour, so I better skedaddle. Unless there are any other questions. So thank you very much all for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Barry.
It is. So you need to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Call the meeting to order. Want to go, Barry?
Sure. And my last stop of the day, I started at 4:30 this morning. So hopefully I got enough voice. Good evening, I'm Barry Normandeau. If you don't know who we are. I'm President of Normandeau Trucking. We've been here since 1937. Heavily involved in the waste industry since the late 40s. Currently, our company handles probably the bulk of what's handled up in the North Country through transfer stations from the Canadian border down to into the White Mountains. And we do a lot of the federal contracts, pretty much all the state contracts in this area of that nature, and things like federal prisons. And we do governmental organizations, much as like the Town of Dalton. And pretty much have the largest fleet in this area, and our container fleet is definitely the largest in this area. Excuse my voice is not very good. I, as a person, been involved in the waste industry for a very long time. I was on the original governor's task force for solid waste, promulgated a lot of the rules, a lot of the permitting, and on that original go-around, you can see that the state's trying to upgrade right now, and through the DES and everybody else. I've been involved in permitting of landfills, Rochester many years ago when I was still on the task force, and most recently Mount Carberry when they had to do it, they upgraded their permit. I was one of the people that went to the process and got pretty much all the support together. I was very happy to say that went extremely well. The public hearings, nobody showed up. It was all done on TV, closed circuit TV, email, text. I think I had one person comment the whole entire process over 3 hours. So they've enjoyed a very good process. The bulk of what we haul currently all goes to the Mount Carberry Landfill. It was a choice we had to make about 30 years ago. And that's pretty much where I segue. You people have probably one of the most unique situations going in the state of New Hampshire. Only one other town that I'm aware of, at least that I was involved with, that had something similar. That was Town of Dalton about 20 years ago. And what we found is to keep all our options open all the time going through the process. You have a very neat process where you may have a landfill come into your neighborhood. You currently have a, correct me if I make a mistake, you currently have a contract with Mount Carberry.
Yes.
What we did up there in Colbrook at the time, Bino Lamontang was involved. I don't know if you recognize any names. Bino's pretty much way up in state government now, but we found that we were going to 2 landfills, and it became a choice because they had to close their own landfill, but at the same time, Mount Carberry was becoming open to the public, where towns could join that consortium that you see there now, and which is a municipal-owned landfill, which is totally different than a commercial landfill. Mount Carberry is a very unique thing. It's owned by a municipality. It is a municipality. They govern themselves. It's owned by 9 towns up here in the North Country, and it runs on a totally different model. If you know anything about landfills, that particular landfill was built with a 50-year expectancy. They've got easily plenty of room up there. All landfills go through the same thing, but theirs seems to be, you know anything about paper mills, they over-engineer everything they do. And that was built by the paper mills at the time, James River, later on became Crown Advantage, and so on, therefore, after. And the municipalities run in a different model. They're only trying to support what they're doing up here. Their waste stream is only about maybe 5% that comes from outside the area. That's pretty much what they do. They enjoy an impeccable reputation. You're sitting in a situation right now where you got one landfill up here that's exhausting, and maybe another one is coming on. I can tell you from being involved in that process, that takes a long time. And it's, as you can see from the newspaper articles, there's a lot to fill in those applications, trust me. And the rules are getting ready to change again. So I don't know what will happen. I'm not here to talk about that particular landfill, what's coming there. I'm just saying, what you probably should do is keep your options open. You have to have a place to go. You currently enjoy coming to this landfill in Mount Carberry. As long as you maintain a significant presence there and you continue hauling there, so if you hit a period of time where things are very squirrely as to what's happening and whether you're going to have a new home here next door, I don't know. But if you had that option like Colbrook did, they were able to take and switch over seamlessly just by a phone call. So you have possibly 2 options, but one of them is not totally thought out yet, not totally applied, not totally approved. And my best recollection, I remember the last time I read a newspaper on this, I understand NCES is probably going to be exhausting within the next 12 months or so. Now I can be corrected on that because I haven't read anything recently. But here in New Hampshire, there's another thing about this landfill in Mount Carberry. It is the only landfill that keeps the rates suppressed. I say that. It's not owned by a commercial entity. They continue to jack their rates all the time. Mount Carberry usually waits sometimes 4, 5, 6 years for to increase the rate. It's usually very small. It's not some massive thing. You know what it's going to be year after year after year. There's no fuzziness in the paperwork that comes from them. They're clear what they're going to do. I, as Normandeau Trucking, was asked to come here for the simple reason this you've lost your recent hauler. And so therefore, I've never had a contract. I've never had a presence here in this town in terms of the town's transfer station. I don't think I've physically been to it, maybe in 25 years or whatever it's been since you opened it up. And so I can't speak to the actual physicality of the landfill at all. But we provided the town rates. Our rates are structured on the same lines we give the federal government, state government, and all the local governments. And we don't play favorites, but your rates are lower than what the going market is in terms of our company. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have in terms of, I go to a lot of towns, and I just sit sometimes the whole entire meeting and answer questions that probably have nothing to do with our company. But we've been at this since the late 40s, so we have a pretty good idea what other towns are doing. Sometimes I may have a challenge over here, and you say, well, try what they did, and well, this is what we do. Most of this transfer stations up there have my fingerprints on them since the early 90s. Either I was involved in the design, implementation, or the transportation, since all my customers are still with me that I've had for 30, 35 years. And it just gave you a quick overview. You've got a very unique situation that you can capitalize, and you have an awful lot of leverage that you can do, and keeping yourself in a good position going forward. As long as you, like I'll say, as long as you keep a presence at Mount Carberry, a significant presence in terms of hauling there, you'll be welcome there.
So are you saying,
My neck doesn't bend very well.
that's all right, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Are you saying that there might be some type of option where we work with 2 landfills at once?
That's what Colbert did. They initially got into their own landfill, which was really basically a dump. We all have them up here. Every town's got one. Their dump was closed, I think, in 2003 or 4. It was about the time frame I was working with Commissioner Ball for the paper mill did not want to be in the waste business. And so they were getting rid of the power dams, or getting rid of the landfill, a few other entities. So what we did is we crafted a way, Commissioner Ball, that the municipalities bought the landfill. But there was a crossover period there. And at the time, the rates at Mount Carberry were going to be significantly at or below what market was going on. And so therefore, kept up the relationship with NCES for a period of time. And they tend to go through these cycles of permits exhaust, and they have to extend them and everything else. All landfills go through this. But it looked like back then they were going to close out. And that did not happen. And they got further permitting, but it allowed Clover to continue going, and then to NCES, but then they started switching over to Mount Carberry because it looked like they wanted to get a route. Mount Carberry only takes waste they know they can handle. They're the second largest landfill in the state. They have a cap. What we're trying to do is keep the North Country towns taken care of first. Because once all the bonds are paid, Mount Carberry doesn't have to take any more trash in than what it's got just to maintain it. So if you're already in there, you've got a home. But to get there later on after all the bonds, I don't know what the final say is on that. But the game plan initially was, once we get this paid off, these bonds, we can start shrinking who comes into the landfill in terms of the concentrics. Because they work with the North Country and they work out. Typically, most of the waste that goes there is from Bow, Concord, northward. A small amount comes from Vermont. A very small amount comes from Maine. That's like 1 or 2% in total. Am I answering your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. But it was a very seamless process for Colbert to pursue this. So when they got ready to go, they weren't willing to wait any longer on the other landfill. So they didn't know what the permitting process was going to be. And at the time, it was a little more constricted to what was going in. They've opened it up at Mount Carberry, so it's a little more amenable, we'll say, for this conversation. But just about every town up here now is there. And right now, I'm probably roughly bringing in, the process, or about to bring in 9 to 10 towns to Mount Carberry. Everybody's signing up with them. That's the direction they've decided. They want a home for their rubbish for the next 40, 50, 60 years, not the next 5, 10. They also want that income to be steady stream, rates steady pretty much across the board, and you can get the rates from them at any point in time. Yes, sir.
Well, what did you just, quoted the percentage of out-of-state trash going there?
from last time I saw, because that's the floating number, they're about 4 or 5% in gross.
I truck through there a lot. Can you explain why there's so many Massachusetts trucks going in?
That's usually the auto fluff, what they call, what he's asking for. He sees trucks going in there every day. And they're out of status. They bring in what they call auto fluff for alternative daily cover to cover up the landfill. That's required by law, but the bulk of the waste still comes from New Hampshire. Just because it's got a Massachusetts plate on it doesn't mean the waste is coming.
Not in Mass, Maine too.
I know.
There's a steady diet coming out of Route 2.
Yep, I understand that.
I truck every day.
Yep, I do too. Without going over the scale shack, you been in the scale shack there?
I've been up there years ago when I hauled pulp.
Yeah, there's a pretty transparent operation. You can get the actual numbers if you wanted to.
Okay.
That's Lisa Mirando is really Lisa Mirando, by the way, is the executive director of the landfill, and she's a really decent person to work with. She's very easy. It's she'll do what she can for you, and it is they don't solicit for waste. If you notice, you don't have a sales rep coming from the landfill ever. They're a municipality. They're not in the business of selling tonnage. They're in the business of operating for the members that own the place. That's it. It's not a commercial entity. Doesn't compete. Doesn't care to compete. If you want to go there, you go there. If you don't want to go there, that's fine too. But if you're already in the landfill, that makes a big difference, especially going forward.
Do they require a contract?
They do, but it's pretty much an idea. I can't speak for them, by the way, for the record. I'm not here for the landfill. I'm not here for any to solicit for them. That's not my job. I have to be very careful. But they do have an agreement, and it pretty much tells you what you can and can't take, what the tonnage is going to be, what you're going to, and that changes sometimes too, but what the tonnage will be and what the rates will be to go with it. There's another thing too, that landfill takes something that's very important. As a town, you're responsible for providing a means for disposal in your community of all waste. One of the big ones is asbestos. There's only 2 facilities in the state of any size that take asbestos. Rochester, WMI, and Mount Carver. I can tell you, Mount Carver's rates are 1/10 of what Waste Management gets down in Rochester. It's a pretty significant rate. Once you're in that, there's some other things other towns don't ever seem to leverage correctly, and I'm trying to get them to do this. You own your own transfer station. You own your own, I think you own your own containers. I'm not certain of that right here sitting as I stand now. But you also own this tipping fee. It's your tipping fee. It's not some company's tipping fee. So therefore, when you're doing a town project, why would you go out and get a contractor to haul it over there and pay them? And some of the markups are 25, 35, 40, 50%. You just don't need a hauler. So you do a demo project here in town or something of that nature, and there's asbestos or something else you might need. You already have your own tipping rate. You just need a hauler. Why would you have a contractor come in and jack that rate on you? So you have options to do other things when you own your own rate, so to speak, at a municipal landfill. You won't be an owner of the landfill, but you're in other municipalities. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned Carberry has room for 40, 50, 60 years.
They have, the site is huge.
All right, what are they permitted for?
Currently, I think they're permitted I think about 10 years right now. But they're always working on that. It's a very...
So they would have to go through the same permitting process as, say, Casella or any other landfill?
Yeah, that's a law. Some other things about that landfill. It doesn't ever get discussed because it's a municipal landfill. When the paper mills built that, the site they picked was very unique. I remember working with the EPA back when the landfills being built in 1990. I'm 71 years old, so you know, probably 35, 36 when this went. It sits on a glacier. The way that landfill sits, it sits in a swale, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's almost like a cuffed out area. It was built by the glacier. It dumped about 240 feet of impermeable clay that's compressed by the glacier. All landfills leak. I don't care what anybody will tell you. They're all gonna leak. It's wet. The cool thing about Mount Carberry is, one, it's over-engineered. Two, it sits in this swale, so if it does leak, if you know anything about compacted clay, it's real hard to get anything to leach through it. It's like cement in most cases. So they got their own wastewater treatment facility on the premise. They don't truck it off. They do everything right there. If you ever get a chance or an invitation to go, I really advise you. I go to a lot of landfills. There's nothing that looks like Mount Carberry.
It's got water tested for PFAS,
Yeah,
and it's still in it.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, so it's forever.
I've been dealing with PFAS in my company for 25 years. It's everywhere. By the way, you all have PFAS, don't you? Yeah, unfortunately. There's a lot of plastics has got a whole other thing. Any woman that was born from 1960 on, chances are you've got plastic in you too, which is an estrogen mimicker. There's a whole. We're not here to talk about all that tonight, but if you ever have a chance, it's great education to go there because you'll see how differently it's run. It's got paved roads right into it. It's clean. It's very clean. It's not a land mountain. It's a landfill. Now, we're in a position right now where you may have another landfill to go to right here in your own town. Now, that's something you people have to decide upon yourself. But I haul to all landfills. I can't think of any I don't haul. Yes, ma'am.
You'd also go to Casella?
Yeah, I'm asked to, remember, on your hauler.
Just saying.
I'm permitted to go anywhere.
Did you give a quote as to what your rate would be to
We
do
gave
that?
it to the town. It's predicated on what we call it governmental rates, which is below market for us. We don't quote out spot markets as a higher. Those are for onesies type people.
What is the rate?
For the tipping fee,
Tipping fee rate, whatever you want.
did they get
$72
$72 a ton?
a ton. Okay.
Our rates are predicated on how far away you are from our operation and what kind of a requirement do you require. A swap and haul where we come in, put down a container, pick up yours and go. Or do we do it where we have to bring it back? And I think they're not too different. I think you asked to be a quote for NCES to it as well. So we just amended that last week, week before, whatever it was, last week or so. So you have two parallel rates going for our company. It's not a whole lot of difference because
What is the difference?
no, the difference like $25, $40 a load difference to just go from one to the other. It's a distance things for us. We have to go. When I send out a truck, it's gone 3.5 hours, 4 hours. I get some customers 7 hours just to do it. We're quoting in, I don't normally name a town, but in this particular case, I have to quote for right now, Piermont, New Hampshire.
What is distance?
Distance driven. But I can go back to Mount Carberry and that rate behavior. That's one rate for everything except for asbestos. Your bulky waste, your MSW, and your demolition are all the same ways. There's no one or the other. All of a sudden finding out a rate change in the middle of your cycle, the way you do it in most commercial landfills, you'll know long before you got a rate change. And it's universal across the board.
You're just the hauler, right?
I'm just the hauler.
There is an extra charge if you get extra mattresses though. You could sneak 2 or 3 in,
Yeah.
but if you get a bunch of them, they're gonna charge you
And
for them.
that's whoever's running the transfer stations ability to do that. I'm not having any problems. I've never seen anybody have a problem. Do you have a backhoe at your transfer facility or access?
We got one where they go up there and
Good.
Pack it down.
Densify your loads is what Mr. Duber knows what I'm talking about.
I was wondering if you remembered me.
Oh, yeah. You're a student of mine with that, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much just an informal thing tonight. You've had a relationship with another hauler who doesn't exist doing this as the front end of the year. And so I'm trying to help out, people there's nobody else of any size. There's a lot of guys in onesies, but what you need is not somebody that's got a truck. You need somebody who can actually handle it. We're the only active, if you call our company, we have more than one division. Maybe some of you notice our moving company. We have a big moving company. We've been around since 1948. We also have a couple stone companies. McCormick Memorials is one of our stone companies. And I also own 50% of another company called Molecular. We invented the first green oil absorbent in the world. And I think you're a multi-billionaire, make a penny a pound. So it's not a lot. But so we've been up here a long time. I mean, the Duber family. I go back 3 generations. I know your family does too.
Yeah.
So we all know each other in terms of that. I'll walk out of here tonight and you go, oh, I should have asked him a question. Talk to Jeanette or anybody that's got my card that I brought down. You're always welcome to email me. We run around the clock. I don't, but the company runs around the clock actively 365 days a year, 7 days a week, Christmas Day. And yes, we've worked many a Christmas Day. We've got customers like Walmart that need help around the clock sometimes. Store goes down, all the frozen food's got to come out in one day. There's not too many companies that do that. We have an active program. Usually we're to your company that day or within 24 hours. But usually you work with a transfer station attendant. You can figure out what their flows are like. They got a pretty good idea, those guys. So they just call it in. And we just plug them into the schedule, so there's no wait time, which is a common problem with the bigger companies.
So are there other options for waste transportation in the country now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, there are.
Well, I am.
Yeah. There's Presby. There's Whiting's, which does a lot of Dalton right now.
I thought Whiting was just very small and just like 2 tractors.
They have several trucks. They're a small family-owned business. And
Question.
for Dalton, they could handle Dalton. For something that Mr. Normandeau covers,
There is one other caveat. Mount Carberry, these we talked about in the broader sense, not just me. You have to be actually permission to go there as a hauler.
really.
So here's where it works for you guys in North Country. That keeps the big companies from coming in. There's a strategy when you leave the North Country. These big companies like Waste Management, they know you're a public landfill. They'll send 30 trucks that day to your landfill. It just choked out the cap. In other words, how much you're allowed to take in a day. So where the hell does all your waste go? So you have to find another way for landfill that day to haul your waste in.
You're telling me that certain trucking companies are not allowed at
And Mount Carberry, they will not take any of the big companies.
Really? That's interesting.
Part 2, just because you're a smaller company, you also got to get their permission to be there.
Interesting.
That's a case-by-case scenario. I have to provide my own insurance. By the way, I also handle the Mount Carberry waste stream too. So I have to maintain all my insurances with them on it. If I'm the company, then I'm supposed to maintain a certificate of insurance with you people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere, yeah, that's standard.
It's standard operation, but they require both ends in this particular case. But it's kind of, I had an awful time 25, 30 years ago explaining to the people like at DES and Commissioner Ball, who I love him to death. He was a great commissioner. I try to explain to them, if we lose this landfill because they were trying to be bought out by Waste Management, Casella, and a few other companies, big ones, they're public. If we lose that one landfill here in northern New England, watch what happens to all the rates all over the northeastern United States. This landfill over here is the leverage point that keeps the rates down.
By over here, you mean,
They don't raise their rates.
what are you talking about?
Mount Carberry does not raise the rates very much. One time it went 10 years before they raised the rates. That's significant. Usually, most landfills are raising their rates once, twice, 3 times a year.
Well, they're gonna be raising their rates, because I asked them, and they do, they relook at things. You know, it's like $4 or $5 a time when they go to do it.
It's not a huge amount.
No.
And it can go sometimes 4, 5, 6 years. One time they went 10 years without raising rates. They're not in it to be a commercial entity with stockholders. They're a municipality. It's owned by 9 towns.
Don't you think that more landfills in the area would increase competition and lower prices?
That's the whole point of Mount Carberry. Watch what happens on Mount Carberry.
How many acres they got to work with?
I think the whole impact area, not that permitted area, I think it's up to something like 800 acres. Pretty big. Well, I'm not here to suck up a lot of your time, but I thought I'd just come down in case you need us.
Appreciate it.
Like I said, I could walk out of here. Don't be bashful. Email me, call me. I'll usually get back to you by email. But you got Sharon, you got over there. You got Lisa Riando, and you got the Casella people over here. So I'm sure you can get some pretty good information. All the parties are invested. Well, thank you for allowing me to come down, and
Thank you for coming.
I appreciate it.
Good to
And
see you.
hopefully, I've done what you wanted me to do tonight. I'm sure you would have corralled me back to what it was. Okay, have a good evening.
I'm glad to see you still walking.
You want to hear what happened to me?
What's that?
Do you want to hear what happened to me? I thought you wouldn't use it. Do you know I just stopped teaching?
Yeah, I knew you had to stop teaching.
Yeah, I just stopped teaching at Tufts University. Yeah. The program was getting a little stiff.
Well, I'm telling you,
I'm
your
in my
body can only
70s
take
now.
so many slams.
Which you know, guys, what he's alluding to. I'm an 8th degree black belt, and I trained the U.S. military up until just a short while ago.
Yeah.
At 70 years old, I tell people I used to be 6 foot tall. I got beat down to this side. I had a real severe injury that you see. I broke 7 ribs, dislocated my shoulder, and that's why my neck's not running real well. But you know, we're tough on the New Hampshire boys. We just back to work the next day. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Checks.
cemetery deed.
We need a motion for the cemetery deed.
Yield tax warrant.
It's the 25th, isn't it?
It is.
It's the 21st.
No, I put the fifth, it's just hard to see.
We'll go for one.
Yep.
There's 2 pages. Sorry, that's why I turned it the other way. I thought you guys would see the signature line sticking out. Sorry.
Paying attention anyway.
October bank recs and transaction report.
We don't have any minutes for this meeting, there's just the ones that Tom wanted to come back to from last week.
Transfer station discussion, tipping fees and tracking.
Can I talk about minutes a little bit? So the last meeting, we had non-public meeting minutes that were not sealed. And both of you said you didn't want to approve them because you didn't agree with the meeting. And it seemed to me in retrospect a little bit unusual that you both came up with the same reason for not wanting to sign them. And I want to remind you that we as board members are not allowed to discuss things outside of a meeting. So it's just unusual
Why
that
would
you
you
both.
bring that up? Because we did not do that.
I'm just saying it was just unusual that you both said you didn't agree with the minutes.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying that's how it appears. The other thing that I'm really upset about is that you don't agree with the meeting. So the meeting was done in non-public, but the minutes were not sealed, and so it is now public. The meeting was about a formal written complaint by an employee. As a board, it's not our responsibility to agree or disagree. Our responsibility of a board, as a board, and as a supervisor of an employee, is to look at that complaint, to take it seriously. If there's need for investigation, to figure out how we're going to investigate it. And most important is how we're going to resolve that complaint. What are we going to do to address the situation? That's what our job is. And I think that by saying that, you are just validating the reason for the complaint, the hostile work environment complaint, because you're not respecting our employee and the situation that she's dealing with. You know, if I, in other roles, when I have had HR situations, if there's an HR department, it would be reported to them and they would investigate it. And as a supervisor, if I was, and I have been in roles where I supervised other managers and supervisors, I would be figuring out what are we going to do to make the situation better. That's the important thing here. We need to act on it as a board.
And that should have been also sealed because you're talking about residents that is supposed to be sealed, because according to law, we're not supposed to do that. And furthermore, to accuse myself of being hostile, I'm going, how am I hostile? You didn't even give me no explanation on how I'm hostile. None, zero. And I don't, this discussion is going to stop. We're going to do something about it, but where I am going to make a motion to, because I want to bring some stuff over to legal to, I think a lot of things, the line has been crossed and I need some counsel because I don't know what to do here anymore. So I'd like a motion to be able to do that.
I'll second it.
So what are you going to bring to legal? I think we need a little bit more detail here.
I'm going to bring some papers, some accusations and whatnot, and talk to them. And I will bring back the feedback in non-public when that time comes.
So I think as a board, we should know what the accusation, exactly what you're taking to legal. I think we should, as a board, see it and be part of that discussion.
It's part of the undermining of the board. That's where it lies. And we talked about it before. I try to do it in the right manner, but you keep, oh, you got to do it here, or you got to do it there. I ain't doing this right. And I'm trying to do what's right, and enough is enough. And I'm going to talk to them. So if you can call the vote, I'd appreciate it.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Nay. Unless
And
we
I
do it
will-
as a group, as a select
I
board.
will bring it back to the board in non-public when I get done talking with them.
Now, we'll move on.
Which one are we on?
B.
Transfer station, I think we should get some bids on that, not just one person. If we talk about the trucking part of it. So I make a motion that we have 2 or 3 other truckers come in and give us a bid on what it was gonna cost us to move the rubbish to whatever transfer station.
I think we need to find out their capabilities.
Yeah, so if we get them come in and we get a bid and find out, this is just like what happened here tonight.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Am I contacting those companies, and who do you want me to contact?
Presby, Whiting's. I don't think Whiting's can handle it though.
What's that?
I don't know how big Whiting's, how many containers he's got.
Well, I gotta have to ask and talk, I don't know if you don't ask.
Just Presby and Whiting's?
Do you know of any other truckings?
Wayne knows.
Oh, yeah, Wayne's, he's pretty
No,
good.
he doesn't do
Oh, he doesn't?
About Kimberwolf.
I don't know if they do or not.
I see him heading up there,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Who is
You can
that?
ask.
Timberwolf.
And I'm gonna clarify that, we're really looking for quotes or estimate, not bids. We don't have a formal bidding process.
Yeah,
We don't have
okay.
the staff to do that.
I did send an email out to Rebecca at Casella regarding those questions we discussed at our last select board meeting. The first one, how will the facility accept our trash if it is closed? Will someone be there even if the facility has ceased operations? Her response was, Casella is a fully integrated resource management company with multiple transfer stations and facilities that are licensed to accept waste in New Hampshire. Upon closure of NCES, we would assess and determine which would be the best option. The next question, will Casella pay for the additional trucking fees associated with taking Dalton's trash to one of their facilities further away? Their answer, Casella's proposal to the town of Dalton is for a term of 2 years. When that term ends, we would assess which of our multiple transfer stations and facilities would be best suited to accept Dalton's materials and would take into account hauling costs. The next question, does Casella provide trucking services? If so, can a proposal be obtained? The answer, yes. Casella provides hauling services. If the town wishes for Casella to put together a proposal for hauling, we will do so. The next question, can Dalton choose its own trucking company to deliver trash to NCES? Their answer was yes. Hauling is not included in the current proposal. The last question, Casella proposals stated that all of Dalton's municipal waste and construction debris, along with their recycling, would go to NCES. Is it required to send our recycling to NCES? If we must send our recycling to NCES, must we also send our aluminum and metals? Their answer, our proposal includes taking Dalton's household zero sort recyclables, and she attached a sheet with the information, what's included and what's not, and assumes that you will continue to use your existing providers for specialty items such as metal and, although not recyclable, items such as appliances and tires.
It wouldn't hurt to see their quote on that. And can I get a copy of that too, Jeanette?
Yes, you can.
We were emailed it.
What's that?
You got a copy of
We all
that
got
from
it by
Rebecca.
email today.
She sent
Oh,
it to
yeah,
everyone.
okay.
Yeah, just this afternoon.
This came in when I get off.
Need a property auction?
We're scheduled for December 7th here in the building, 11 o'clock.
So even with just one property, they're doing it here.
Yeah.
Dan, no?
They have everything that they need right now. Once their underwriting is through with accepting or approving the loan, they will generate the closing documents, and then we'll have to figure out when we'll get together to sign those. The next meeting may be possible. There's not a 2-week delay or any delay in them funding it, so I think we need December 9th if they're able to, if we sign everything and get everything to them that Tuesday and the funding is available before we cut the check to the county, then we should be fine.
So you think that's enough time, or do we need?
I spoke with him and he said that wouldn't be an issue, so the county bill's due on December 17th, so that almost gives a whole week.
And then you're going to be out of town as of the
13th, but I'll make sure that the check is cut, signed, and in the mail.
So we'll need to, as a select board, agree to sign it outside of the meeting.
What?
Oh, no.
No,
We'll
because
just
I
get the
cut it
check.
on the 9th.
Okay,
I think that's when we meet again.
okay. So we'll sign the TAN documents and sign the check to the county.
Yep.
Citizen public information session?
We talked about that last time, that he was willing to come in and do a public information session on the host community agreement if we wanted.
Conservation Commission? Any
We had that, a meeting and, you mentioned, Joe Beth, about, documents possibly stating that they operate on their own accord. You didn't-
So I've been pedantically going through warrant articles, and I'm getting near the end of that process, but the thing I have to find is, it wasn't until recently that the town report started having the minutes in the town report. So I can look at the warrant articles, but I can't see the action of them without going to the town clerk and getting the minutes. So I'm still working on that.
I went through the minutes and found where you wrote a letter to the old legals, and they stated that he could not do what he was doing.
So that
So that was already, that was a proven fact that we are, my point is, if we don't at least put a letter in stating to DES that we did not approve it, we're gonna get charged for whatever happens on that other end.
So there's no charge involved, and the issue you're talking about was a couple of years ago, and that was the Conservation Commission,
That was
Hiring-
23.
okay, a year ago, sorry. Hiring an attorney, and that was dealing with the petition warrant article to get rid of the Conservation Commission. So that was a totally different issue. I don't think you can, it's like apples and oranges. But the appeal that you're fighting was only to say that the shoreline permit should have been sent to Dalton. That was the crux of the appeal. There's no charge involved at all.
A second appeal, Ken, I read that day.
What you read, as I recall, was a whole different thing on an RSA that dealt with if there was arbitration. And that's not pertinent to this issue at all.
Well, how long before you get through that, so we'll know your document that you want?
I'm diligently going through it. I have to go to the town clerk and get minutes, and those are probably somewhere in the vault. And I know you've been swamped with election and.
I haven't looked yet. I might be able to look in the morning.
Okay.
Clean energy, New Hampshire solar grant.
So we were awarded the solar grant. Melissa's gonna come in on December 9th and talk about what the next steps are for that. So that whatever steps we need to do can be decided upon, so that if we do decide to do the solar, then we're prepared to do that. I think it may need to go to town meeting, and it may need to be approved by the town. I'm not sure of all the logistics of it. So she's coming on December 9th to go over that information with us.
Smith Road update?
There's no new information aside from the fact that I spoke with Consolidated Communications today and received a confirmation work order that they're supposed to come and move that line tomorrow. So we'll see if they show up. Nothing from the engineers yet.
Nothing?
Nope.
Nothing from the FEMA repair funding?
They're working on all of the cost data that I sent over to them.
Before we go on to new business, I want to bring up old business because probably not the last meeting, the meeting before, we talked about going over our attorney's invoice and agreed that I would give them a call and get some clarification. And I did talk to them and get clarification on a number of items. So on that missing item that was on the October bill for 2.8 hours on September 18th, telephone conference with clients, outline issues and next steps. That was a billing error. It was a charge for another client that was unrelated to Dalton. So that was not ours. So that's why it came off of the next one. And there were a lot of things that we went over, but for example, on October 22nd, there was a bill for 2.7 hours, $621. Review remaining personnel policy issues, exchange email with town administrator regarding the same. On the same date, October 22nd, 1.3 hours, $299, exchange email and analysis with town admin regarding road agent issues, which is really the personnel policy because we have not had any road agent issues. He's going to look at that because that appears to be a duplicate billing. I also asked about why we were charged 1.5 hours, $345 for reviewing the DTC redaction for the right to know request, where they had already redacted their bills, but he was reviewing what they had redacted. That still seems like a lot of time for that. We also talked about the deed repurchase. There was an item on October 1st for 2.3 hours, $529. And that was receive, review, and exchange email with town administrator regarding the deed repurchasing, study and review tax deeds and draft documents. And he's going to look into that because I questioned the amount because the emails show that Jeanette had emailed information to him at 10:35 and gotten a response at about 11. So I'm not sure why we charged 2.3 hours. So he's going to check on that. So I expect we will see a discount on this bill. I don't know what that number will be. Yes, I absolutely think we should. I also asked, why some of the background research isn't being done by a paralegal, which would be at a lower rate. And he really just said there would still be legal review. So we'll have to see what it comes back for in terms of a discount.
I might want to add on that, we had made a motion that the planning board could send off an RSA or something just to get clarification.
That was the HB 1221.
Okay,
Yep.
well, the permission from the board was for that one time, and he went twice. And, so that we got almost $1,200 just for the planning board. Just so
I
that-
think we authorized the planning board
Just that
to
one time.
contact legal and work on that issue. So I'm, in something like that, we'd have to talk to Carl as chair, but I assume there was some iterative, questions back and forth. Is what probably happened.
Maybe charge twice on that.
Well, they're two different prices. So review, receive and review from the township planning board and work on town issues regarding the HB 221.
1221.
Yeah, 1221, sorry.
Yeah.
Exchange emails with the town planning board.
Well, I'm assuming that he probably received the emails and did some research and then eventually got back to Carl, because that's what it seems he does on his billings, it looks like to me.
Yeah, and then I think Carl probably had more questions. I can check with Carl and call him again if that would be good. I can check on that.
On the new business. You all set, right? Joe, that?
With the, yes.
About that Joe Diesel doing the inspections.
Mhm.
Can we get Adam and Ron here, the next meeting?
Okay.
Do it at 6.
We have our public hearing at 6.
Oh,
Do we have a proposal from Dumas?
he can explain it better than I can.
Well, he ought to come in too then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's willing to come in,
Okay,
but he'd rather come in with just us
right.
and Adam and Ron.
So it still needs to be a public meeting. And I think we still need a written agreement so that things are spelled out.
That's why he's coming in. So we know what he's doing.
Okay,
But yeah,
But I
you're
just-
right, it has to be spelled out.
but we have to have a written agreement.
Okay.
We can't just have him come in and tell us and say, yes, go ahead. We still need it in writing.
Yeah.
So when are we talking about?
I don't know.
You're wanting to do it on 12/9? It would be at 6:30 then, after our public hearing. Yep.
Can you reach out to Joe and Ron? I
And
think,
Adam?
and Adam.
Do you have
Do
his
you have
contact
Joe's number?
information?
I think so.
I know Joe changed his phone number, so.
I think I have his cell, or his email.
Public comments?
I have a question.
Dan?
You guys received my email question on posting the agenda, and that it was an approved motion to do that, and why hasn't it been done?
I didn't receive any email. Did you send it to the wrong email address again?
No, I did not share, but I will send it to the selectmen.
I never got it either.
So what did you say? I have a request to know why you're not posting the agenda if it was a motion that was approved several weeks ago. So I'm just curious why we don't have an agenda to look at before we come to the meeting.
There's an agenda on the board and there's the agenda posted online.
There's an agenda online.
On the calendar where it shows that this meeting, in there, there's the word that says agenda and it's underlined, so if you click
That's
on it,
really buried. How come it's not on the first page?
because it's where the meeting is posted, all the meetings are posted on the calendar.
When
All
did
the
you-
meetings have always been posted on the
When
calendar.
did you start posting agendas?
After Scott came in and requested it and they made the motion and voted on it.
Perfect.
And
I
there's
just
also
couldn't
one on
find
the
it.
bulletin board that was up there, I think it was Thursday.
Well, thanks for pointing out my error again and sending it to the bottom. Appreciate it.
Just wondering.
Okay, non-public.
3.
I make a motion to go into non-public.
Second.
And I would like to bring up something in public after our conversations.
We'll bring them now.
So who made the motion?
I did. Tom second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to seal 1, 2, and 3 non-publics.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna make a motion that we go back to the Mitchell Municipal Group for our legal services. And that's based on the issues that I brought up in terms of the billing. Your billing is so sloppy. I cannot believe that they put an item on our bill that was for another client and that they had what appear to be duplicate issues. In addition, there's another issue that we discussed in non-public where we, on September 23rd, asked them to send a letter to somebody and pursue a thing, and that it was, time was of the essence. They finally sent the letter, when was it?
November
Something, the beginning of November. Sent it regular mail, not certified return receipt. They didn't ask for a deadline for response, and that just seems to be, and I'm used to a different level of expertise and service when working with legal counsel. So for that reason, all of these reasons, I make a motion that we return to using the Mitchell Municipal Group for our attorney.
I'm not gonna second it.
I would like to think on it. We'll talk about it again later.
Okay.
So I don't want to act on this right now.
I'm also, I think, they're charging us a lot. I mean, there are errors in billing, but even without the errors, they spend a lot of time on issues that should be quicker. So that's my recommendation. I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yep, Mitchell Municipal Group.
So our next meeting is not until December 9th.
Do we have anything that needs to be done before then?
December 9th.
I don't think so. We will have to discuss the meeting the week
Hey,
of
how you doing?
Christmas.
but,
Hey. How you doing? Can I have you?
Yeah.
December 9th is our next
Sorry, what are you?
regular meeting.
and we start with the public hearing. at
6
6
o'clock, yes.
Be the one-armed bandit.
There you go. Right.
I didn't remember this.
Yep. So we'll put this
We'll
on.
go over it at the next meeting.
Put this on the agenda for,
December
So, legal or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you do-
Something wrong?